Hello everyone, Colin Canet here for Woodwork Web. Today we've got a fun project, another router project. Today we're going to be making a one-piece box. Now this is a little box, like a little jewelry box. It's a great place to keep keys, jewelry. This one even has a little stand on the bottom of it. So with this video we're actually going to break this down into 3 different videos. We're going to spend one video talking just about the box and how to make the box. Then we're going to spend the second video talking about making the stand, and that's a little bit unique in how the stand goes together and what it takes to put that together. And then we're going to talk about finishing of the little box. But the reason we call this project a one-piece box is it only takes one board to make that little box. This is a 3/8 board, about 26 inches long and 4 inches wide. And from this board we will cut all of the components for the box. Now the base itself requires another, this is a 3/4 inch by 5 inches by 5 inches. And that's what the stand will be made of. But we'll be doing that in another video. So for right now, we're going to show you how to make a one-piece box on the router. Now the components that you're going to need in order to make this little one-piece box, aside from the wood that we just talked about, the 3/8 of course, 4 inches by 26 inches will make your box. A 5 inch by 5 inch by 3/4 inch for your base. And you're also going to need a router table, which we're sitting on here, and you're going to need either a 1/4 inch or a 3/8 spiral bit. We actually prefer the 3/8. We find that it's a little more forgiving when we're cutting the box top off, and you'll see that in a little bit. And also you're going to need a rabbeting bit. And these rabbeting bits have bearings that can be exchanged on the top. You can put different bearings on there for different depths of cut. We now have this set for a 3/8 cut, and you'll need to do that on your rabbeting bit. And the last bit is a Roman ogee, or just an ogee some people call it, and we use it for the decorative side on the base, but we can also use it as just the round over on our box. So you're going to need those 3 bits and a router table and your wood, and we're ready to go. In order to get a better visual idea of what the box looks like, we're going to be cutting the piece of wood that we have, the 26 inch long piece of wood, into 6 sides to complete all the sides of a box. Now the top and the bottom are 4 inches by 4 inches. 2 of the sides, and we actually have the sides marked with an S, 2 of the sides are 4 inches, but only 3 5/8 this way. And the 2 final pieces, we call them ends, and they're marked as E for end. They are marked, or they are measured 3 5/8 by 3 5/8. Now the black that you see on here is what I put on with a black felt pen, because this is the area that is going to be cut out with your rabbeting bit. And I put that in black so you can see that. The red slots across here, this is the inside of the box, and this will be the top, this will be the lid, and this will be the bottom. And the way the box is assembled is just like this. This is the top, this is the bottom. And the box comes together like this, with the sides and the other side just like that. And then of course the last end. You notice all of these slots all have to be at the top because we're going to be using those to use that as a cut line for when we cut the top off. And of course there's the last side, and the top goes on just like that. And that will eventually be glued, and then what we will need to do once this is all glued and has had a chance to sit overnight and dry, we will be cutting, and you can see where I've just marked this red, we will be making a slot all the way along the outside of this box, and when we do that, the lid will just come off. That will actually form the lid of the box. So, the top, the two ends, and the two sides. There's the two sides, and the two ends, and the top and the bottom. 4 inches by 4 inches, 4 inches by 4 inches, 3 5/8 by 3 5/8, those two. And you can see that there's no rabbiting cut on those. And on the other two sides, there's just a rabbiting on each side. So, let's go ahead now and cut these squares. Now, you can cut these pieces for the box. You can cut them on either a table saw or a chop saw, or like this, a sliding miter. I prefer the sliding miter, and I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to set this up on a sliding miter. You can use the same principle on a table saw so that all of your pieces are exactly the same cut. I think you'll find that making these boxes is not only a lot of fun, there's a lot of rewards in it, because these little boxes make great gifts. So you might find yourself making a number of them over time. And in fact, the more you make, the better you get at making them. And I've made a number of them over the years. In fact, what I've done to make things simpler for myself is I have some little measuring sticks. This one is 4 inches long, and this one is 3 5/8. And I have them marked all the way around. And I use that as a guideline when I'm setting up my saws so that I don't have to remeasure all the time, and also so that I get consistent results. I'll show you how I use those. Now, with the saw unplugged, and this is pretty important for your safety, what I do is lock the saw down, and on mine you can lock it so that it stays down. The next thing, because I'm going to be cutting the 4-inch pieces first, I'm actually going to put the 4-inch bar, and I put it so it's just touching the blade, just like that. And then I put a stop block in. And I found that for my saw, this is the easiest thing, this little scrap piece of wood and the little clamp. Other machines may have other alternatives, but that's what works best on this one. So, just measuring this across here, I now know that that's 4 inches, and I can go ahead now and cut all of my 4-inch pieces of wood, and that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to do some of this off camera because you don't need to see boards being cut. Okay, I've unplugged the saw again because now I'm going to install my 3 5/8 measuring stick, because now I'm going to cut the smaller, the 2 end pieces. There's all our pieces. There's the top and the bottom, the 2 sides, and the 2 ends. And as you recall, the ends had no rabbets, so I'm going to take and put them off to the side. The top and the bottom had rabbets on all 4 sides, and the 2 sides had rabbits on either side, and they were against the grain. The two rabbits are against the grain. So that's what I'm going to cut now, is all of these black areas, and I'm going to start off by cutting the two sides. Now I have the rabbiting bit set in here. I also need to set the height of this right now. And I have this little set of measuring bars. There's an 1/8, 3/16, a 1/2 inch, 3/8 inch, and there's the 3/8 inch, and there's the 3/16. Now all of this wood is 3/8 of an inch thick. Half of 3/8 is 3/16. So I'm going to be using the 3/16 bar and use that to set the height of that blade. But then I'm going to show you how we check that, because if this material is off a little bit, we still need to make sure that we're in the middle of this board when we're cutting the rabbit. And we already know that we're cutting 3/8 of an inch deep, because we have the bearing here that only allows for 3/8 of an inch cut. So we're going to set this, lower the bit down, and we'll cut our rabbits. Okay, we've set the height of that bit. Now we're actually just going to use this little piece of scrap, and we're going to show you how we run it through one way and then turn it over and run it through another way to check to make sure if that's at the right height. Now there's the two cuts, and we'll do a close-up of that. You can see, you'll be able to see that there's a little bit of, there's actually about a 32nd of an inch of wood between there. Now there's those two cuts that I just made, and you can see that there's a little bit of wood when I cut on either side of that. So that tells me that that bit needs to come up just a little bit in order to be in the middle of that wood. Okay, we've raised that bit just a tiny bit, and we're ready to run our rabbits now. And there's all of our rabbit cuts. Remember, we cut the edge grain first. Now we're just ready to do a dry assembly, and if that all comes together, then we can glue these up. Now before we go to the dry assembly, there's one last thing that we have to do, and that is we have to cut the slot. Remember the red part that we had inside all of these? We need to cut that slot. And I've installed the 3/8 spiral bit in here, and I've actually set the height, and the height is the same height as this dado cut. Now, of course, we don't need to do the top and the bottom, so I'm going to set those aside. And remember, I said that I like to mark all of my pieces, and I mark them towards the top so I know what the top is. So all of these pieces now will just run right through that, and they'll all get a slot put into them, and then we can, from there, we can go to the dry fitting, then we can go to the gluing. Well, there's all our four pieces, our top and our bottom, our two sides, and our two ends. So let's have a quick check to see if they all go together. Remember, the slots are at the top. Here's the two ends, and the side comes in just like that. and the top, and that looks good. Now there's a little bit of threadies that I see on there, so I'm just going to do a little bit of sanding so that these edges are nice and crisp. The other thing, you need to make sure that when you cut, the next cut that we make, the next slot is going to be lower than this. So it's going to be on the outside and it's going to be lower. So what I'm going to do with one of these before I actually glue it up, I'm actually going to put a little piece of masking tape on here that shows me exactly where that slot is going to be. So there's our box all set, ready to go. You can see that I've actually used painter's tape rather than clamps on it. You don't need anything special. The painter's tape holds fine. And now I'm just going to take all of the tape off the box. Now this is a side view of our box, and if this was the inside, you can see how that slot is in that area. The next slot we cut is going to be on the outside, and it wants to be lower than that first slot because the box lid will then just drop right onto that and give a lip on both sides. So that's what we're going to do now, is cut that top off. And before we get started, I just want to check the height. That's good. And we're good to start cutting off the box top now. The next step now, of course, is the finishing, and with this box I'm actually going to round over the edges, the top edges and the sides, and then we're going to mount it on the base. We'll also do another video on the full finishing and what we've done with that, and you can follow along with that. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, we ask you to do that, and of course check out our website for a full explanation of how to make one-piece boxes. I'm Colin Cadet for Woodwork Web. Thanks for watching.